What I do is inconsequential. Why I do what I do is I get to shorten people's journeys every day. What I love about our hospitality industry is that it's our mission to make people feel cared for while on their journeys. Together, we'll explore what hospitality means in the built environment, in business, and in our daily lives. I'm Dan Ryan, and this is Defining Hospitality. Today's guest is a hospitality leader in the luxury, full service, select service, branded, and independent hotel spaces. He's well-versed in the various needs and variables in all sectors. He has expertise conducting the symphony of insanity of what it takes to open a hotel on time and on budget. He's the president of design and construction of HEI. Ladies and gentlemen, Scott Hammons. Welcome, Scott.
Thanks, Dan. It's an honor to be here.
You know, it's so good to be here. And one of the coolest things about doing this podcast is like, I call them collisions, all these conversations that I have with people. They're like breadcrumbs leading to other leaders within our industry. And one of the first recordings that we did was with a friend and other leader, Aaron Anderson. And as soon as I hit stop, he's like, wow, that was so great. I was like, are there any other people that I should have on here? He's like, oh, Scott Hammons would be great. He really helped show me the ropes and like opened so many doors for me and helped him become a better person than when he started working with you. So it's just like so for me personally, to be handed that football to you is amazing. And I know that we've known each other for a very long time. I've seen you at all of the events. We've talked here and there, and but it's a real pleasure and honor to have you on, especially because not only Aaron, but also Josh Pearlman, who's like a dear friend of mine as well. And I'm sure there's countless others that you've impacted in a positive and meaningful way. So let me start by saying thank you. And it's an honor to have you here.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Aaron Anderson. It's very kind of you. I love that guy. He's got such a great entrepreneurial spirit. We've done some fun projects together, and I like when he follows me around the HD show or BDNY or whatever, because I can tell people he's my bodyguard.
Oh yeah, he is imposing.
But he's doing some great things, and I didn't realize he had said that, and it's very, very nice of him. But I'm glad to be here.
Well, I'm glad to have you here too, and I think that's a great place to start, Scott. So if you think about the hundreds or thousands of projects that you've been involved in and people that you've worked with, right? And because I get this also, that there are times where I'll bump into someone and surprisingly, they'll say, oh my gosh, it's so great to see you again. You really impacted me in such a positive way at XYZ. And oftentimes it's a moment that I might not remember, or I vaguely remember, but it's amazing how those brief interactions can also be so impactful to others that we meet along our journeys. So like, are there any other examples of that where, you know, you've been surprised by an impact that you've had on someone else in our industry or otherwise?
Well, I mean, I just think that's the greatest thing about our industry, right? It's one of the most relationship-based industries out there. And, you know, we travel a lot. I mean, it's part of the travel industry. So, you know, we get out there and mix it up a lot more than, you know, some folks that might have an office job, you know, counting beans at their cubicle. You know, I'd like to think that I've had an impact on people. I guess I haven't necessarily written down all the times people have said that to me. But I definitely enjoy the teaching aspect of what I do. You know, I'm actually forming a new team, and I've got some new team members, and one young lady who's just like a sponge and super eager to learn. And I love sponsoring that environment. And I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't had people really give me a shot and, you know, and teach me things. And, you know, a lot of what we learn in the project side of this business is it takes courage under fire, right? And you learn hard lessons, uh, in when you're in the thick of it is when you learn the best lessons, and you learn from the people that you're in it with. And I've had some great mentors along the way, um, who've they've impacted me, and so I try to pay it forward. um, and and it's not just people that work for you as an employee, right? It's you're working with a whole team of people, different consultants. And I'm probably have a reputation for driving some of those consultants pretty hard. It's kind of required in the project world. But I've got some long lasting friendships that have come out of it. And I'd say probably some of the best friendships are the ones that came out of the some of the hardest, most grueling projects, right? um
I always take those hard, grueling projects as the ultimate tests, right? And learning experiences, because if we don't learn from our missteps or mistakes, we're all doomed to repeat them. And I also love sharing with my clients and other stakeholders, because there's so many stakeholders involved in a project, where it's like, okay, listen, I've had this very expensive learning experience. Can I please share it with you? Um, because again, we're not saving lives. I know we hear that all the time, but in opening hotels, like, there's so much of a feeling, and there's so much nuance that goes into what a hotel is. But at the end of the day, it's also it's a financial asset in
yeah,
a real estate segment, right? So time does equal money, and there is a positive or negative ROI on the good things and the bad things
yeah,
that can happen.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, that's that really is, that's the whole basis of what I'm doing now. You introduced me as president of design and construction for HEI. The interesting thing that a lot of people don't know, and this, I'm giving you, I guess I'm giving you the exclusive here,
Oh,
and to use a press term. Um, you know, when I was brought on to HEI, the partners' vision always was to create a separate subsidiary of HEI, a significant component to what HEI does, but we're going to be branding this firm separately. And we actually, as of this week, have come up with a name, which is Ground Level Hospitality Development. Um, and our sort of our first task is to be a major tool to the HEI investment team, and helping analyze, underwrite, and then project manage new acquisitions. And but we're going to be set up to do that for all of HEI's family of investment partners on other projects, and even new partners. I guess I would say I'm giving you an exclusive here, Dan. This new breaking news. We're and this has been our intention all along, is for this firm, if you will, to be a separately branded subsidiary of HEI. So we actually have a name as of this week, which will be Ground Level Hospitality Development.
I love
And
it.
I think the owner's perspective and the significance of the investment that goes into hotels is really the basis of what we're doing, and how we go about things. So we're for our first job, and a lot of what we're doing right now is a major tool for the HEI investment team to bring quality acquisitions to the table and underwrite them and understand how to reposition hotels, hopefully better than a third party could do. But we're also set up to help any of the investment partners that HEI has in the family, or any other new customers. I actually had a new customer kind of come by way of relationship this week, and we're going to be picking up a small little project in the Caribbean, thanks to that relationship. So once again, it's all relationship based, but you know we're rather than being a third-party project manager, I'm kind of coining the term first-party project management.
Ooh, first party project management. I like that. And unpack that one for us. Like first party, because you're a subsidiary, or is it going to be a whole separate company from HEI?
It's a subsidiary. Yep.
Okay.
So separately branded. We're not necessarily tied to everything HEI does, but HEI, we're the benefactor of having an operating partner like HEI, and they're a benefactor of having us to help bring these deals at the ground level to fruition, and then take them all the way from the ground level through to an activated or repositioned hotel.
And
But
then Scott, let me ask a question on that, because I know you're on for the HEI portfolio. It seems to be slightly more than a majority are branded hotels. So let's call it 60% or something, and then 30 or 40% are independents. Do you find that ground level will be adding more value to ownership groups outside of HEI on the independent side, branded side, or is it going to, do you think it'll be like an even mix?
probably be pretty balanced. I think my experience that I'm bringing to the table is really balanced between the branded hotel world and the independent hotel world, and a lot of what I've done and a lot of what we hope to do in the future is repositioning of hotels. The way the market is right now, there's a lot of hotels. If a hotel is going to get acquired, it's going to because there's room to do something with it. There's room to rethink it, reactivate it, reinvent it, and in some cases that might be rebranding a hotel from one brand to another, or from a traditional brand to a soft brand, or it might be taking a branded hotel independent. And so I think we've got such a depth of experience and partners that we can go into a deal with open eyes and open minds, and be creative with what we can do with it. So I mean, that's one of the biggest differentiators. I mean, there's third-party project managers, and I just can't bring myself to describe myself as a third party. Like it's just, I've only ever worked on the ownership side of things. I only have an ownership lens. So I really want to bring that to the table. And
But I love hearing you say that, Scott, because it also, first party, third party, I see the tension between that, but it's really, I always find that, the people that are the most involved and care the most about what they do is, no matter what it is when they feel like they have an ownership stake in it. Correct.
Exactly.
And that's a real level of caring. And actually, to peel back on that a little bit, the skill set you have, to quote Liam Neeson, right? I have a very particular set of skills, but the skill set, that's funny. The skill set, I laughed at my own joke. That's good. But as you've honed and refined these skills within the built environment, right? So you really could do this in office, you could do this in education, you could do this in residential. Like, what's the draw or attraction that you have to hospitality?
Well, I mean, yeah, you're probably right. We probably could take this service into other sectors, and who knows, maybe we will. I think there's definitely a lot of room for hospitality influence in other sectors, but there's no business like the hospitality business. I mean,
Why?
it's it's just such a dynamic and immersive experience, or and as a business, it's, I guess it's very similar to theater, right? Except, as opposed to a theater where you've got actors on stage and people backstage and people in the audience, everybody's sort of interactive, and the audience members are being pulled up on the stage, and the back of house people are being pulled on stage. It's like a living, breathing experience. And service, when you provide hospitality to somebody, it's just a very complex product, and it really you should be able to tap into all five senses when you're delivering that product.
And okay, but So then I love that idea and the metaphor of theater, and everyone is involved. So to reflect back what I heard you say,
and interacting.
and involved and interacting. Like, when did that hospitality hook, so to speak, stick into you? When did it grab you?
Oh, for me,
Yeah.
1994. When I started, I started as a security, started as a gatehouse attendant and security guard at Mohawk Mountain House, which is an old Victorian resort in the Hudson Valley.
Hmm.
And
Near
it
New
was
Paltz, next to the Shawgagungs.
yep, the Shawangunk Mountains, or the Shawangunk Ridge, as people call it. Um, that hotel, it's still owned and operated by the same people that founded it in 1869. Believe it or not.
The family.
The family that founded it, the Smiley family. And so when you start working there, they put you through an orientation and you learn this story about, the twins and their wives. They discover this place, they buy it, and then they build this magnificent hotel. And if you've never seen a picture of it, if there was ever a hotel you see one picture of and you're sold, it's Mohawk Mountain House. And so I was just totally seduced by hospitality, I think, when I started there. And when I finished college, I paid my way through college working there. And when I finished, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with my life. And my dad was like, dude, you're doing it. Have you not paid attention to the fact that you're successful in hospitality? You have fun with it. Like, why not make a career of it? And so that's really, I think ever since then, I've gravitated to hotels that are not cookie cutter, that are unique. It's been kind of my mission to help create hotels, give hotels a story, do something that's a little different. I was fortunate. I got to work after working at Mohawk. I got to work with Kimpton Hotels, and that really opened my eyes to the lifestyle hotel world. And then I, to really double down on lifestyle, I got to work for Schrager and opened the Gramercy Park Hotel. And now even when I'm in a branded hotel, sort of a big box traditional branded hotel, it's fun to think about, if this is theater, I guess I work in set design, right? And how do you make that big branded hotel its own unique experience? It doesn't have to be the same fox hunting picture over every desk in every city. So that's probably a throwback to the 80s right there, but to show my age.
So I actually, I don't know. I guess I did bad research or something. I didn't know you worked at Kimpton. Kimpton is like a real part of my upcoming into this industry. But then also Schrager. So that working on that Gramercy Park Hotel, was that when it opened, when you were there?
Yeah. I
Oh,
opened
wow.
it. Yeah, in fact, that it's heartbreaking to see that. I saw the posts about liquidating the hotel, and I had blood, sweat, and tears in that building. It's honestly probably one of the projects one of my favorite projects when you think about a unique experience and involving all five senses. But yeah, it's heartbreaking that it's closed. Just
Yeah, because if you think about, like I've said this before, with respect to Kimpton and the independent slash boutique, whatever, however you define it, and wherever you draw the lines between them. I always said that, I think that was the first real independent slash boutique hotel company that kind of scaling to like, 15 or 20 properties, whatever. But they were able to do it in a way that when you walked into a Kimpton, from a service and giving and receiving of hospitality,
yeah,
you just knew it was just always different. You could feel whatever that difference was in Kimpton. That would be on kind of one side there. And then on the other, Schrager, and just how from like the Mondrian to the Cliff to the Gramercy Park, and just so many of these like iconic,
the design. I mean, there's
the
nothing
design.
like
I
it.
mean, yeah, it was stark and all. I mean, just like it just really kind of turned the whole idea of what that boutique or independent hotel could be. It turned it up on its head. And
Yeah.
I really respect all this, everything that Schrager's done all the years, and then all, with the collaboration with Marriott, and like I'm very intrigued by that. Also, to go from something so special and unique to going with the biggest dog out there of Marriott, and like how did they navigate that with Edition? And I think that
Oh
they've
yeah,
really kept it. I think they've kept it really cool too. So
oh
I don't know.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
neat how
definitely.
big companies can do that. Like as a Marriott and Edition, and then also as IHG, a big company has bought Kimpton, but also let Kimpton kind of
Yeah,
flourish and be its own thing.
yeah.
And I think it's how do you think those bigger companies really navigate that level of feeling and theatrics, if you will, without like changing it too much? Because I've seen them get crushed also, um, when other companies get acquired. But what do
Yeah.
you think a trick in, or how do you think they balance that? That's really interesting.
Well, some people are some of the bigger brands are doing it better than others. They're all. I mean, listen, the the groundwork that the Kimpton hotels and the Schrager slash Morgan's hotels of the '80s, they I mean, they're really kind of one of the founding catalysts for the experiential economy, if you think about it. And it's translated far beyond hotels, right? I mean, now if you go to the new American Airlines Lounge at DCA, like you can see hospitality's influence on that. But I think, the bigger brands, they all, they all ask for there to be a design narrative. They all want, and it's almost in some cases it becomes almost a little too much, to try to, you can't turn a big, 500 room Marriott into a Kimpton hotel from a story perspective. But they do ask and challenge you, in my line of work, to come up with a design narrative for what you're doing that has more than just pretty pictures and, cool chairs. So I think, that's really, all of the brands have now adopted that process, in order to try to achieve it. Now, some I think are better than others. I think it's kind of funny how all the brands are starting to kind of blur a little bit. And you had brands, and then you had soft brands, and now you've got the brands trying to be more soft. They're all competing with each other.
Totally.
But I think, listen, some the soft brands out there have done really well. I think the soft brands are the perfect compromise. I think from a, if you want to be the faithful points collecting either Marriott customer or Hilton customer, but you love the unique experience, of an independent hotel. I mean, they were really, that was probably one of the more brilliant inventions in hospitality in the last few years. And it actually has created some good opportunities for a lot of the people that I work for to acquire a hotel, pump new life into it, and reposition the hotel, but still be able to capitalize on the power of the brand family.
Mm.
But I think the whole hotel doesn't have to be a story either. Um, you can create a really cool story with just one venue in the hotel. And I've done a couple of these projects with, where it's a very cool independent, almost like an independently branded restaurant in a big box hotel. And what that does is it allows the people selling that hotel, they bring those group leaders in and they show them the hotel. If they can show them this one element that gives them a sense of lifestyle and something unique, then they get the whole group. There's like a halo effect. It's not just the profitability of that restaurant, it's the halo effect of having elements of lifestyle in the big box.
Mm.
I'm working right now on a really cool project in Minneapolis where we're doing that in a Westin hotel. And it's you're going to bring it's sort of a Kimpton like model if you think about it. Kimpton's original philosophy was the restaurant should always be branded separately from the hotel. It should have its own
Totally.
identity. And so, we're doing that in more and more of the big box hotels. But I think it's kind of hard to assign a story an overarching story to a big box brand, traditional branded hotel, and that's how you go about it.
Um, a few minutes ago, you said something that really resonated with me, which is um, for those the Schragers of the '80s or the Kimptons of the '80s as a catalyst for the experiential economy, right? It's really like getting super hyper localized and creating this really unique experience, right?
Yeah,
Based on whoever their prospective customer is. And then if you think about this idea of first party project management, right? Where okay, so if it's an HEI branded hotel, right? Or an owned hotel, owned operated hotel, you're there, you're dealing, you're understanding what the thesis is of what you guys at HEI are trying to do. For an owner that's not part of the HEI experience or umbrella, if you will, or portfolio, if you take that idea of first party management, are you coming in with those ownership groups at the very earliest stages where they haven't even come up with an experiential concept? Are
yeah.
you helping, like, walk us through, like, an owner will come up and say, hey, I want to do this meets this and blah 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 and have this experience, and then how do you kick that off so that you can create that experience?
Well, so that I mean, that's the base. That's the whole tenet behind ground level. Is you bring us in at the very beginning, and a lot of our partners, notice I'm saying partners and not clients, because it's really our approach. Our investment firms, right? They don't necessarily have hospitality people or even design and construction people in their organization. And so they're obviously looking for the dollars and cents, the return on the investment. So by bringing us in early, and I can give you an example. There's a big potential acquisition that hopefully will be public in the next couple of weeks. That I went to on my second day with HEI. I went on this due diligence trip, and in due diligence, you're walking around looking for, is there a leak in the ceiling, and does the elevator work and the chiller work and all that kind of stuff. But and there's a million people that can do that. But what we do is we go in and we say, what what about this hotel is successful, and where's their opportunity? And so this particular hotel that I have in mind is more of a resort property, but does a lot of group business. And it was just lacking. It was lacking some of the activation and the programming that would make it more resort like. And
Mm.
so it's one of those things where you look at the hotel online, you book it, you say, okay, I'm going to a resort, and then you get there and it's just not that resort like. And so how do we make it more resort like? The lobby, the food and beverage experience needs to be unique. The pool experience needs to be unique. And so we worked a lot of those ideas into our due diligence before a purchase and sale agreement was ever signed. And that's all I've been doing for the last few months, is really looking at a lot of these deals early on and figuring out how do you add value besides just tweaking the occupancy and the rate to get the best RevPAR.
Mm.
And like I said, sometimes there's a dual effect. You can say, okay, I can make that restaurant more profitable by making it cool. But if you can drive the group business or the transient business in addition to that, then it compounds the profitability.
And then that's from at the very early stage. It's, you're involved with saying, okay, well, this architect, this designer, this F&B person, like, it's like, hey, let's like really look at them and see how we
Yeah.
can create this really seamless experience. Is that?
And we have just an incredible roster of consultants in all those categories, right? And some of them, are good for some projects and some of them aren't, and so we tend to kind of create the perfect cocktail of talent for the project. I've got some, like, one of my favorite designers is Wilson Ishihara, and it's really primarily just Mark Wilson and Yoko Ishihara, and they do just incredible pieces in restaurants. They love restaurants. But I would, they would tell me not to put them on a guest room job because it's just not what they do. But then I've got other designers that are incredible guest rooms, and so in some projects, if it's a fairly big master plan or fairly big repositioning, you might actually couple two different designers in two different areas. So I think that's one of the things we're definitely trying to bring to the table is a roster of people that we've used over the years that you have those relationships with. Once again, it comes back to that relationship.
Yeah.
But also the unique experience. And when you hire a third party project manager, you're it's kind of like a general contractor. It's like who you get, who's the superintendent on the job. It could be the greatest general contractor in the world or the biggest, but if you don't have a good superintendent, they're not going to do a good job. And a lot of the third party firms out there, they're hiring kids out of school that might not have as much experience. They might be putting them in multiple sectors. I've had project managers from certain companies that are working on a hospital and 3 hotels at the same time. And, so
different.
I like just surrounding myself with people that have this incredible experience and hospitality focused. I mean, I can't imagine working in any other sector, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Well, okay. So let's pretend if I owned a hotel that was not currently in the HEI portfolio, obviously it's owned separately, but not managed by HEI. Would if ground level were to come in as a first party project manager, right? So as we set the vision, you guys help execute the vision. Is a goal then to also have HEI help manage that property as well? Or like, is there what other accretive services does HEI bring to the table? I'm curious about that because I mean, how many? It doesn't total the total number of properties, but it like goes on forever as far as your whole portfolio. How many properties are in your portfolio right now?
That's a good question. I think it's 89, but Ted might yell at me if I got that number wrong. Just kidding.
Well, I'm sure it's let's say it's 89. It's changing. And I think we're also entering a period in our industry where that trading, the velocity or frequency of the trading of management companies gaining properties, losing properties, acquisition, disposition, I feel like the volume is going to start getting turned up on that. So it's a moving target to say the least. But let's say, between 80 and 100 properties, let's say I have this hotel that's outside of that umbrella. I'm like, hey, Scott, I've worked with you before. I want you to make this vision come to life. Help me make this vision come to life. What other elements could HEI bring to the table that are accretive to the success of the project?
So, HEI started as an owner operator, a fund driven, owner operator, and then really kind of transitioned more over the years into this third party management world. But now there's a big focus on joint venture acquisitions. And so HEI leverages an incredible investment team. I think we have 14 people on the investment team, and led by Clark Henrati, who's just a brilliant hotel investment guy, veteran of the industry. But then he's got several veterans under him leading teams of 3 or 4 people. And they just are like, I would say after being at the lodging conference, I think that our team is probably more active than most. They just have this ability to find unique deals. And so a lot of what we're doing is bringing sliver equity to the deal. We basically do the legwork to find the perfect deal. We bring a sliver of equity, and then we bring in people from our family of investment partners. And then, ideally we HEI ends up managing the hotel, and ideally ground level will end up managing the development or redevelopment of that property. But they're not those two things aren't wed to each other. So, HEI is one of the reasons why I joined the HEI and I love is that they are very relationship based. If you ever
there's that word again,
and they truly, like, I'll give you a good example. They're there's no sort of formal board of directors or executive committee that's ever, you don't hear the words, oh, we've got to send that to executive committee. What gets said in the office is, let me run that by the three partners.
Oh, so it's like super entrepreneurial and not as calcified with systems and processes. So it it brings about a lot more flexibility in execution.
And the business is truly run by three veterans with very distinct experiences working together. So you don't have this like hierarchy of like, well, we got to go get John to approve that,
or a board, which is even better. It's like making a decision of deciding by the lowest common denominator in many cases.
And so then HEI's got these partnerships with other firms and through other owners that we manage for. And so the great opportunity for me was to start something that is very relationship based, start a project management discipline that isn't, I don't have to go out and beat the street. A lot of the work we're doing is coming to us organically through those relationships and working for people that view themselves as partners, not clients. And, it's good chemistry.
I love it. And then as you've been there since what, June or something?
Yeah.
July. So, okay, you're just starting to get your feet under you, or your feet are under you. You're just starting to get up to speed. As you look to the future, like what's exciting you most about what you see coming down the pike?
I think probably the most exciting thing is a lot of the stuff we're looking at. It's very diverse. There's downtown urban hotels, there's big box hotels, there's independent, there's luxury, there's resort market, and that's, I guess, variety is the spice of life. And I've been fortunate that my career I've gotten to play in all those different sandboxes, and so I think that's fun. I mean, it just, every project is its own experience, and I wouldn't want a job where all I did was build Courtyard by Marriott's, or a select service brand that's the same in every city, where you're literally using the same architectural module and the same FF&E package. I get to work on such a variety of projects, and it's super cool.
For me, I agree with you. I'm also drawn to and my business is also set up in a way that it's like the big box or the select service. It's a very interesting sandbox, but I'm not equipped to supply into that sandbox, right? On the one-off kind of unique, independent, I don't even know what they're called anymore, custom work like that. To me is much more interesting. I think what's also cool though is it not one is not necessarily better than the other. And I think whether it's, being creative or analytical or mathematical or artistic, no matter what we're all drawn to in one aspect and where we excel, it's also reassuring to know that like there's other people who are just as good at doing the other things that we are not necessarily the best at. And I think it brings up this idea of like, what's the highest and best use of our life experience and time, and where our quote unquote zone of genius is. And I think whether it's the path that you've chosen or that I've chosen, or that anyone listening, like if you're deciding, like there's got it, like much in the same way that your dad said when you were deciding, what do I do? And he's like, dude, you got to stay in hospitality. Sometimes we might not even know where that place is, but as long as we can ask as many people and be able to find that place where it doesn't feel like work. Obviously it is work, but
there are definitely days that it does, right?
but remember, those days are usually those days are those expensive lessons that we can share with our new first party projects that we're on, right? Where it's like, hey, let's be a partner, let's be an owner, let's be a stakeholder in this together. And I think, I just think it's really important to recognize the lanes that we've kind of developed over time. And if you're a lot younger listening to this, it's try as many lanes as you can,
Yeah.
because sometimes the lanes that are like, oof,
You have to
I
take
wish
time
I
to
did.
reflect, right?
Yeah. But
It,
sometimes like touching the stove and burning your hand, that's just as informative as being in a place
right.
of where you are all the time, because, oh wow, I just really didn't like that. That can inform a whole different career path. So if
Yeah.
as you look back on your career path, like was there ever like a, it could be a project or a place where it was like it was touching the stove for you that was like, oh, let me get back into my jam.
I mean, yeah, I guess you touch the stove all the time when you work in project management, right? Like it's just how bad is the burn? Um, and so I mean, I love in my career. There's been a number of occasions where I've said, "Man, if I could do that, I can go do anything." And then a year later, I'm like, "Man, if I can do this, I can do anything." It's like the challenge is I don't know that they necessarily always get bigger, but they're always different. And so like there's no and that's I guess my career, like I didn't go to school for design. I didn't go to school for engineering. I didn't even go to school for hospitality. Every single thing I've done in my career, I had to take the bubble wrap off and dive in and just try it. And I've been really fortunate along the way. People have said, "Yeah, this guy's dumb enough to try it. We'll let him do it." And um, you know, so yeah, it's, if there's younger people listening, it's something I say all the time. Take the bubble wrap off. Don't you try it. Like if you there's no I don't think in this world anymore, now you got to go to medical school to become a doctor. At least I hope that's still the case. But
YouTube, surgery via YouTube.
but with so many careers, it's not about what college class you've taken, right? It's about what have you been willing to try and learn. And that's I'm very fortunate that way. I often make the joke I'm not an engineer, but I play one on TV, or I'm not an interior designer, but I play one on TV. Um, but it's how you just surround yourself with smart people, try new things. And in the hospitality business, there's so many new things to try all the time. But
I
I guess to go back to your question about, are there any serious moments? I would say that probably one of the more significant, and I wouldn't say burns, but just crazy experiences was rebuilding Frenchman's Reef in St. Thomas after 2 Category 5 hurricanes hit it, going through insurance claim with litigation, getting it halfway built, and then having to close it down for COVID, right? Like these are the kinds of things that you can't make up. You can't say, "Oh, I want to go do that," but it's like it's like its own little unique master's degree that you can now go apply to something else.
I I love the metaphor of taking the bubble wrap off. But it's not just I would also push back on you also. It's not as an individual having the initiative to want to take the bubble wrap off and potentially break it, but also learn. But it's also surrounding yourself with mentors, bosses,
Oh,
other
totally.
stakeholders and teammates who allow you to take the bubble wrap off and be like,
Yeah,
listen, we're not saving lives. What we're doing is very important, but
yeah,
like you gotta try these things out. And you know what? If you break them, hopefully it's not too bad, and it's all you. We can always learn from that as well.
yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, once again, I mean, I have I'll call them partners. They're people that don't necessarily work in my business unit, but end up working with me on a lot of projects. And
Mm.
I'll give you for instance. There's one general contractor that I have used on quite a few projects, and we started off with an absolute disaster of a project, and there was some burning going on. and there might have been a a fairly tough conversation or two, but because we worked through all of that, they ended up becoming really trusted resources of mine.
Mm.
And so some of my favorite consultants or contractors or designers are the people that you've kind of been through the fire together, and so now when you go into a fire again, you got each other's back, you can trust them, and you know what they got when they've got courage under fire.
So I love that you bring up the fireman metaphor, because I wanted to bring it up because you mentioned Aaron and Josh earlier, but Aaron actually was a fireman, which surprised me. Did you know that?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Unbelievable. But like, in what way, like when he started working with you, um, what were some ways that you, as his boss, said, "Hey, take the bubble wrap off that," and like, just go get it done, and you know what, you have permission to break it because you're going to learn. Do you have any, like, for you, I'm thinking about you as a mentor, and I'm just joking about the fireman thing, or
Right.
using Aaron as an example, but speaking generally, like, how do you, as a boss or a mentor or a superior, how do you give permission to those that are reporting to you or other stakeholders in a project to take the bubble wrap off and try it?
So I try to prepare people for what they're walking into, but I still make them walk into it, right?
Mhm.
Um, and I when Aaron first started, I threw him on a project that had a kind of a messy um, FF&E procurement situation, and it did not involve you. Uh,
Great.
um, and we had a lot going on, and I needed somebody to kind of take the ball and run with it. So he didn't necessarily have all the background, but I said, listen, sometimes not having the background is the best way to go in, because you're going to ask questions that you might not otherwise ask. But I would stay close to him. I gave him some tools, and I remember he came back, he said, well, listen, they agreed they want to negotiate, and they'll do this and this. And I said, no way. You go back to them, and like, that's not good enough. And he sort of like, oh man, you're gonna send me back into the fire. He went back in and made a counter offer, and he came back and he's like, dude, it worked. And like, that's just a classic example of, I'll try to arm people with tactics and some knowledge and organize the thought process, but I'm still going to make you walk into that fire and
Well,
get it.
that's actually, for you, just to hear you say that, and this idea of rookie smarts, because like, this comes up a lot in these conversations where it's a fresh experience, fresh set of eyes. But oftentimes the easiest path is to have the superior, or the one with more experience, go into
Swoop
that
in.
fire, because
Right.
there's a lot of zeros, and it can be very meaningful. But to hear you give someone else the opportunity to, and a former fireman, walk into that fire,
Yeah.
right? Maybe with not all the experience, like, I don't think that happens very often. And I think it should happen more, because we all, well, not all of us, but very often, many of us use kid gloves with bringing other people up or along for the ride, and
Yeah.
like, hey, we might want to shield them from that, but you're also shielding them from like a steepening of their career trajectory as well.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, listen, there's times that I do have to swoop in and, play the senior role to get something done. But yeah, no, I think it's the only way to learn project management is to do project management. You can't
Mhm.
learn by watching. I mean, you can learn some things by watching, but it's doing it. I think that's true of most of the hotel business, hospitality. I mean, it's one of the last industries where you can literally start by cleaning toilets and end up becoming the CEO one day. You know what I mean?
Totally.
It's incredible.
Well,
Look at
I also
look at
think,
Chris Nassetta at Hilton. His first
yeah,
hotel job was a hotel engineer. I remember him telling us that at a conference, and I was like, "Man, that's so cool! Like, you're the CEO of Hilton now." But
I actually
project
didn't know
management,
that about
especially,
him. Hmm.
yeah, he,
Wow.
he'd be an awesome guy to get on this
So
show.
I will say, okay, so then I also get pushback too. It's like, you've heard of the bellman that becomes the CEO, or the engineer, or the housekeeper. But then people will say, "Oh, that's like the one in the million shot or whatever." And I'm like, "Okay, but
No.
I think it really happens more than we think." I don't know what the metrics. That
Yeah.
would be a really cool study. And especially now, where in hospitality we're so starved for people at all levels, but especially entry levels. Like, now is I think the best time to get into hospitality, because
Totally.
the career path is so steep right now and so sharp that if you can come in, and I bet you could come in, you could start cleaning rooms, you could probably be a rooms exec before you know it, or head of housekeeping, and then boom, boom, boom. That path of leadership, or
Yeah.
path of career, is so steep right now. It's a really good time to come in.
Yeah, totally. I mean, if you have a work ethic, and you are eyes wide open, and you're young, and you get into this market, and probably in any industry, it's, there's passing lanes everywhere, right? I don't know where everybody went. It's what's
Which,
there's a television show where, like, all of a sudden one day, like 3 million people disappear off of the face of the earth.
oh
Forget what
yeah,
it's called.
or it's like that movie, the Avengers movie, where half the planet disappears.
Yeah, that's what it feels like. And
Yeah,
so if you're still here and you got a brain and you want to work, man, you got it made.
totally. I
Um,
couldn't agree more. Hey, so Scott, going back to you as a security guard at Mohawk Mountain Resort. Okay, so how old were you?
uh, 20,
Wow, 20.
19, maybe.
Okay. So you're 19 years old. Were you in school at the time, or was that a full-time job?
Yeah, I was in school, and it ended up becoming full time because
Mm,
I needed a job to pay my way through college.
mm.
And I basically went around to every department when I couldn't get enough hours in one department. I just went around telling people, "Listen, I'll park cars, I'll wash dishes," and I did just about. I worked in, I think, almost every department at Mohawk.
Wow. Well,
And
okay, so imagine just coming off the heels of the part of the conversation where it was like, the career path is steep. If you have a work ethic, you're coming in. You had a real need because you wanted to pay for school and you wanted to accrue hours. But like, if you, the Scott I'm speaking to now, goes up
okay.
to the 19-year-old you in the telling people not to climb up the rocks or whatever you were doing, what advice would you have for yourself now?
Um, you know, I I gotta say, I can't really look back in hindsight say that I would necessarily do anything differently. So I would tell, that 19-year-old kid, there's no, don't think a job's beneath you. Um, you know, y- try, I would also say, I would just reaffirm that, you know, understanding every component of the business is how you're going to become that leader one day. And so if you understand what it takes to clean a room, I've cleaned a lot of hotel rooms, and it's definitely not easy and definitely not my favorite thing to do. But when it was time to be an executive housekeeper, it made me a better executive housekeeper. And, there should be no job beneath you, and you should really try to do it. And that's really it. Just work hard at everything you do, and don't think you're too good to try something new.
And
Um,
I also think I love the idea of on the housekeeping side, because okay, it helped you become a better executive housekeeper, but you know what else? I think you look at the design and the development of a new guest room package or a renovated guest room package through the eyes of the person that's actually going to be cleaning all those nooks and crannies. and
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
and but you also understand, okay, so that room could be just all stainless steel, solid surface, like you just spray it down with a hose on one side, or it
Right.
could be like this super ornate, beautiful thing, but it's going to take, a housekeeper is going to do
Yep.
clean 3 rooms in a day. Like,
Yep.
the truth is somewhere in the middle there. And I think understanding the full spectrum, it allows you to um,
Absolutely.
really see the matrix
Yep.
and find something that works for everyone.
Yeah. And I also think, my experience in the front of house, has given me over the years a guest perspective, because if I was at the front desk, I would hear what the complaints were, or I would hear what worked really well or what they liked. So I definitely keep all that stuff in perspective during a project today. I've taken many fabric samples and poured wine on them over the years.
Or stone. I love the stone. You leave the Coca-Cola on it or the wine.
Yeah.
Or
tried to scratch the wood floor with the chair. And these are definitely the things that, you carry with you.
Totally. Well, if people want to learn more about first party project management or what you're doing with HEI and ground level, how can they get in touch with you?
So we don't have our website launched.
It's that new, people. It's that new.
It's that new. There we'll probably do a press release in the next few weeks. And I'd say in the meantime, if somebody wants to get a hold of me, they can email me at shammons@heihotels.com. And would be happy to talk to you about what we're doing. And it's keep your ear to the ground. You follow my LinkedIn page, I guess. As soon as I have a website and have all that information, it'll go on there. And I definitely, one of the great things about being on here is I love meeting new people and making new connections. So feel free.
Awesome. Well, I know how busy you are in any startup, even though HEI is definitely not a startup, but I think your new initiatives and everything that you're working towards on this first party project management, I love that term. I think you have to get a hashtag or get,
I might have to trademark
that. Go before this will air in a couple of weeks, but trademark it, get the URL, first party project management. I don't know if it exists. But maybe we can time the launch of this with the press release that comes out too. I think that could be really cool and helpful. So any way that I can help, I'm more than happy to help. So I know how busy you are. That's my long way of saying I know how busy you are. So thank you for your time and insight and experience.
No, this was fun. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Scott. And then also I want to thank our listeners, because again, I say this every week and it's humbling every week. The listenership is growing every single week. And I really believe it's because hospitality applies to not just our industry, but every industry. I think we can all learn from it. So if this has changed your idea of hospitality or how to give or receive it in others, please share it along. It's all been growing by word of mouth so far, and we appreciate everyone listening and all the great feedback. So thank you.
Thanks for doing the podcast.
Thanks, man.